What's good? This is Mr. Mars today here at the Bay Area Producers Conference Beat Battle. Just won my first round, ready to go here on the second one. I'm gonna put up I Got 5 on a reggae remix sometime soon, so you can check me out on Twitter, Mr. Mars Today. Hit my website, mrmarstoday.com, and grab a free tape of the mixtape. A bunch of remixes for you. So yeah, shouts to the BAPC for hosting this. Hopefully I'll be seeing you later when I take the title. Peace. I'm representing San Francisco, California. Been doing this thing for a minute, and yeah, proud to be the Bay Area Producers Conference Beat Battle winner for this year. I don't keep any records of my old material, actually. I made, from probably ages 15 to 20, I made music, and everything that I created I would just throw away and replace it with something else. And yeah, so all my early music is lost, which is probably a good thing. I think it was a natural course. I've been messing with music since I was a little kid. Had a dope music teacher at the school I grew up in, and yeah, it was just kind of something I naturally had to do. And so eventually production seemed to fit the best because it allowed me to actually create all the stuff that was in my head and get, you know, lyrics as well as melodies out. So man, everything I listened to growing up influenced me immensely. My parents had a record player at the house, and so I think my first real experience with music was vinyl. And you know, Rolling Stone record. My first reggae album they had was the Harder They Come soundtrack, Jimmy Cliff. Listened to a lot of the Beatles, listened to a lot of my parents' record collection, and then my older brother was listening to a lot of East Coast hip-hop at the time, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, that kind of stuff. And then I was also listening to local KMEL, listening to Digital Underground, listening to, you know, Tupac, and, you know, Snoop Dogg. So I think my stuff, I always come from a very eclectic listening background, rock music, reggae, rap music. Never got too into gangster music, but that was probably because I just wasn't thugging too tough in reality. But you know, and I think all that plays out when you hear my music. You can hear a little bit of the Beatles and a little bit of the reggae influence and some of the more classic soul, Al Green, Marvin Gaye, all that stuff that I kind of grew up listening to. I think producers have always been kind of behind the scenes, and no one really prioritized them as knowing them or treating them like stars. So it's kind of cool in that sense that now modern producers, people actually pay attention to them even if they don't rap or even if they're not an artist themselves. That being said, modern producers are also a lot more ego-headed, and I think they want to be heard more. So you get, you know, every producer doing little sound ad-libs on their record, you know, the little sound tab or whatever that has their name on it. So I think, you know, in a sense, we're much better off because anyone can produce, and it gives the opportunity for more people to get seen. And in another sense, everyone can produce, and so then the scene's flooded with a lot of people who think they're producers when really they're just beat makers. And so there's a big difference to me between the two. The producers are people who can really make songs from scratch, turn into songs fully developed, and the beat maker is the guy who makes the beat and then turns it over to the team that then continues it. So you know, this day and age, I think there's probably more beat makers than producers. Main production influence in my life was Jay Dilla before I even realized it. Because I was first turned on to Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul and Q-Tip and eventually towards Slum Village, and at that time I was listening to The Far Side, and I was listening to Common Sense, and I was listening to Erykah Badu, and what I didn't realize was that he actually produced, like, you know, 9 out of the 10 favorite songs that I had from these artists. And when I finally did realize that, not quite sure when, it was definitely later than it should have been, it kind of blew my mind and just made me realize how much of an influence and how much of a role he had played in my life as a producer. So, you know, Jay Dilla, I think, by far the most influential producer for me. I'm trying to remember the first time I heard about the Bay Area's producer conference. think probably through Philip Drummond and a battle that I was involved in with Philip. I remember the first year I came was your first year. It was 3 years ago now, right? 4 years ago. Yeah, so I think it was on Van Ness. It was cool. I met my homie Mikos, who produces for 40 Love. Me and him, that was the first day that we met, and now we work a lot together. So that was kind of a serendipitous meeting, and got to meet Poetic Beats. And yeah, I think the first time I was really a bit greener and learned a lot. Like, there was a lot of new information for me in terms of licensing and publishing and the legalities that are involved around being a producer. So that year I learned a lot and soaked a lot of stuff up. So that was a good one. Yeah, I mean, I think that's been my favorite part throughout, is that it's just nice to come out of the lab in general, since I have a tendency to be kind of stuck in here, but to come out of the lab and be reminded that there's a lot of other people kind of doing the exact same thing, working way too much facing a computer screen for 12 hours and plus a day. So I think that's kind of the thing that's always the nicest for me, is just to be reminded that I'm not alone in my workaholism, and there's a lot of other people with the same kind of push and drive for what we seek. Having dynamic tracks, I think, helped me get through the rounds in the beat battle. You know, you only have a minute to play a song, so it's nice to create like an intro and a main section and some kind of like extra hyped up section if you can. So I think the dynamics of them and the vibe and the mix, that seemed to be the feedback I was getting from the judges, was that kind of solid mix, good vibe, and a nice dynamic change, and I think that kind of helped out. I feel alright about it. I think there's a lot more stuff in the works than is always released. You know, obviously the stuff that we see and hear on the radio, to me, is not the best example of what's coming out in the Bay, I guess, would be my point. The stuff that I think is real hot isn't quite bubbling on a mainstream level yet. So I think we have a tendency to be a bit hipsterish and a bit rapish. Those two are the two genres that I see actually making noise out of the Bay Area right now, and it'd be cool to see some other things make noise too. Like we haven't had like a R&B artist from San Francisco in particular to do anything in a long time. The reggae bands in the Bay, while there's some great reggae bands, we haven't had any solid stuff coming out. So I'd like to see some of the other genres be a little bit more represented. But there's a lot of talent, crazy amounts of talent in the Bay Area. So it's an honor to be here and to be pushing a movement, kind of like a Frisco Renaissance almost, of kind of what modern music, what we could do with the hustle that we have and the swag that we have that everyone wants to take and use for themselves. We should really figure out a way to format that into something that can push us all. And the problem in the Bay is that one song hits the radio and then you get 10 songs that sound just like it 5 minutes later. And to me, that's an issue, because then we're not pushing each other to grow and not pushing each other to do new things and get recognized for what we really are, which is diverse, creative people, not just people who can formulate a hyphy song and then make another hyphy song that sounds like it until it's tired. So, you know, I think we got some work to do to really put the Bay back on the map for what it truly is, not just for kind of creating these genres and then fulfilling them. Definitely. I mean, the music business, like any business, relationships are what allow you to really get connected to the people. That being said, don't do it before your product's good. If you go out and give someone a beat CD and it sucks, you probably shot yourself in the foot with that person. So I think I still go back to my first thing, which is work on your product, make sure the art is banging, make sure it's not just your yes men homies that are saying the art is banging, that you push it by some real critical ears and see what people are saying and what you could do better. And then when you really feel like you have what you need, that's when you take the time to network it. And that's when you really push, because if you're pushing on networking but your product stinks, cool, you're going to be a great networker. But that's a different role in the industry. That's not a producer. A producer is a person who sits right here and stares at the screen the whole day.